game in October 2014. He says that although receiving the medal is an honor, it's knowing that he had an impact on someone's life that means the most. Now let's see if those cooler temperatures are here to stay.
Yeah, Nathaniel, how's the weather looking for tomorrow's football game?
It's going to be a beautiful day tomorrow, I can guarantee that. But for right now, let's take a look at our neighbors around the state. Tallahassee right now for a high is 60. Jacksonville across the state is 59 degrees. Orlando and Tampa are both 66 degrees. And Miami down south is going to be 76 today for a high. Now, as we look at our lows, you can see some of the cities are going to be pretty chilly tonight, especially Tallahassee with 38 degrees for a high. Jacksonville's 44, Orlando 50, Tampa 48, and Miami's going to be 68 degrees tonight down south. Now, as we look at our 5-day forecast, you can see that it's still going to be very nice for the week. Football game is going to have a high of 77, very clear skies. The soccer game on Sunday is even going to be in the low 80s.
Coming up on UCF Nightly News, find out about the plan to restore the Notre Dame Cathedral back to its original beauty and just how much money people around the world have donated so far.
Join me to recap what SGA President Josh Boloña said during an interview discussing his and Vice President Jad Shaloub's time in office.
And a few bears and other critters are making appearances on campus. See what the wildlife cameras in the Arboretum are catching.
In sports, Nightly News reporter Zack Winiecki breaks down the UCF players who've declared for the NFL and NBA drafts.
Nightly News starts now.
Good afternoon and welcome to Nightly News. I'm Tanisha Breidenbach.
And I'm Haley Rowland. Today is Friday, April 19th, 2019. In the aftermath of the Notre Dame fire, plans to rebuild are already in the works. In just 2 days, all funds for reconstruction were raised and donations are still rolling in. Nightly News reporter Shania Richburg has more on the rebuild of this historic cathedral.
I mean, how can Paris be Paris without the Notre Dame?
The Notre Dame Cathedral went up in flames Monday night, and French officials are already talking about plans for reconstruction. French President Emmanuel Macron promised the cathedral would be rebuilt in 5 years. Some experts like Associate Curator Coralie Clayson-Glenson say that estimation is optimistic.
I think 5 years is the dream. I think really what the president is trying to say is to give hope to the people. Giving a timeline of 5 years is very bold. I don't know if it can be achieved.
French officials estimate the rebuild to cost $1 billion. So while a monetary value has been placed on the rebuild, what the cathedral means to Parisians is priceless.
It was something visceral. It got me in my guts. I'm like, this cannot be happening. This cannot be true. I am in total denial. I mean, how can Paris be Paris without the Notre Dame? It's just like, I just cannot understand or believe that this even happened. It's a tragedy.
The roof that was made mostly of wood suffered severe damage. This resulted in the spire falling during the blaze. Most of the art was saved, including the crown of thorns. Some of the art did suffer smoke damage, but will be restored. Notre Dame cannot be exactly as it was, but over the years, that's what's made it so unique.
You call it a Gothic cathedral because it has different type of architecture. So I wouldn't be surprised that they would rebuild and then it would have stuff that represents, 20th, 21st century. I would not be surprised. It is going to be France because it will come from the essence of the people of the land.
So far, nearly $1 billion have been donated to go towards the rebuild of the cathedral. In Orlando, Shania Richburg, UCF Nightly News.
Now, most of the main pieces of art were saved, but others were lost or seriously damaged. The treasures that have already been taken out are at the Paris City Hall for safekeeping, and once all of the art is retrieved, they will be stored at the Louvre Museum.
39. That's the number of hit-and-run crashes that occurred in on-campus garages since January 2019. Students parking in garages sometimes come back to small bumps, scrapes, and even dents on their vehicles, oftentimes with no note or evidence left behind of who damaged their vehicle. These type of accidents happen most often in Garage C. According to UCF PD, there were 12 reported hit-and-run crashes in Garage C. UCF PD Corporal Frank Imperato says some students leave the scene because they fear they'll be late to class.
A lot of times the concern is, well, I had a class or I had a test. Well, you also have a legal obligation to remain on scene. So that's got to be the priority, because the other option to that is if you do leave the scene, you could wind up going to jail, and that's not something you want.
Many students feel installing cameras in garages will solve the problem. Corporal Imperato says installing cameras is out of their reach, but UCF PD is working on installing license plate readers at the entries and exits of campus. He says this will aid in investigations, especially with hit and runs.
Now, a new report from Apartment List Rentonomics shows Orlando's rent costs are rising faster than any other city in the nation. Nightly News reporter Abizola Adiemo tells us more about how rising rent costs impact UCF students.
Graduate senior Kara Doden pays over $1,000 for her one-bedroom apartment at University House. She says her rent is going to increase, which is very stressful for her.
It's going to cause stress in the long haul, and it already has started to, because we're struggling to make sure we have enough money for rent, and then everything else we have to pay for, obviously, like car things.
Apartment List Rentonomics reports Orlando's annual rent growth as the highest in the nation at 1.3%. The average rent in Orlando for 1 and 2 bedrooms is above $1,000. Licensed realtor Eric Kohler says demand is the biggest factor in the rising rent costs. He says people want to live in Orlando for tourism and business.
People are going to stay in Orlando. What's going to happen is you're going to just start seeing Orlando expand. So people, if it gets too expensive, then downtown areas or the high location areas, you're going to just start seeing the ring of Orlando expand, where people can go out and afford those type of rent schedules.
Health science major Christina Hernandez says she understands Orlando is a popular place, but she still thinks the cost of rent is overpriced.
I understand people think that it's something that they can do because this is such a popular location, so they have the demand, but at the same time I don't think it's fair because people are spending all of their hard-earned money on rent and just barely surviving.
Some students say they left on-campus housing to reduce living costs, but Hernandez says the cost isn't that much better. Kohler says for now, rent will most likely continue to rise. In Orlando, Abisola Adeyemo, UCF Nightly News.
Now, the report shows that nationwide rent costs grew by 1.3% this year. And although Orlando's rent costs are rising, rent in Orlando is still less than other major cities across the country.
As summer approaches, parents are signing their kids up for camps. One program at UCF is working to give kids with autism a summer camp experience that will benefit them in the future. UCF Cards will host a number of camps for kids with autism, providing them with a fun environment where they can also hone their social skills. Cards Community Relations Director Judy Samuels says most children with autism struggle with social functions.
Affects communication, social skills, and behaviors. So the behaviors is the part really that the kids are there a day or two and they say, we can't take this child. So being able to offer things during the summer is extremely important.
Some programs offered by Cards include judo and karate classes to help kids learn fluid motion skills.
UCF is taking on a new initiative to address rising suicide rates in Florida. According to the Center for Disease and Prevention, suicide rates have gone up in Florida by over 25% within the last decade. UCF is partnering with Advent Health to screen patients based on their mental health, and only patients with warning signs will go through a more in-depth assessment. UCF and Advent Health are working to spread this new initiative to other hospitals around Central Florida.
So, Haley, walking in the studio this morning, it was a nice, cool day. How was it for you?
You know, I actually saw a little bit of clouds in the sky, so I'm wondering what the rest of our day is going to look like. Nick, what can you tell us?
Thanks, Haley and Tanisha. So our current conditions for today, we're looking at 78 right now, so it's looking pretty nice outside. Humidity around 82% and winds coming from the south at 16 miles per hour. So our chance of rain is looking really high at 90%, but let's take a look earlier about what came in when I came into the studio. So this is what it looked like when I came into the studio. It was pretty cloudy, not really too sunny, but there was no rain at all. But later on today, it's going to get really rainy, so keep those umbrellas on deck. Now back to the desk with Haley and Tanisha.
Thanks, Nick. Coming up, a new beginning is coming to an end. SGA President Josh Boloña sits down to reflect on his year as president.
Plus, his take on serving under 3 presidents and the Trevor Colburn Hall scandal. All of this in just a few minutes.
The current SGA administration, led by President Josh Boloña and Jad Shalhoub, is nearing its end.
Nightly News reporter Jeremy Brenner sat down with Boloña to talk about his past year in office.
SGA presidents, there are not that very many, and there's not that many that run twice and serve under 3 presidents. Describe that experience, serving under 3 presidents.
The first one was more seeing him on the way out. John Hitt, I mean, to put it simply, a legend. My first trustee meeting, he gave me my Pegasus pin, so that was really memorable. And then I knew once Whitaker came in, it was time to get to work. Jad and I were meeting with him and Dr. Ihas monthly, talking about how our goals can match administration's goals and drive the university forward. And last, that kind of outgoing for us now, flipped the script, and he was gracious enough to contact me and Jad this past month and say, I want to hear about your experience. What do you recommend for us to do in the future? So it was very different interacting with each one.
So another thing that very few presidents run into during their tenure at UCF is, a big controversy with Colburn Hall. Yeah. And so how did that make you feel?
For the university as a whole, I'd say more cons, just because of, I guess, bad publicity we may have gotten, the trust broken between the state and us, even the trust broken between some of UCF followers and the university. We had double the amount of board trustee meetings than planned, just because so much was happening. And it was, like I just said, Jad and I lost. We came back stronger. And I think the same thing's going to happen with UCF.
We are joined now by Jeremy Brenner in studio, to give us more details about the interview. Welcome, Jeremy.
Thanks, Tanisha.
So, Jeremy, what can you tell us about Josh and Jad as a team?
So the two of them are super close, and I think the presidency and holding the biggest office at UCF is one of their greatest accomplishments, and they've grown closer because of it.
Mm-hmm. And what would you say are some of their biggest accomplishments that they have achieved?
So they've had a very busy year, to say the least, with Colburn Hall and with 3 presidents, but their biggest accomplishment, something that Jad worked on a lot, was his ability to reach out to students. He created a student-wide survey online to be able to really find out what students think and what's going on around campus.
So just briefly tell us what's next.
Yeah, so both of them are graduating this May with industrial engineering degrees, and Josh is moving to Atlanta for a job, and Jad is looking around, possibly Atlanta, Chicago. He's got a bright future, both of them. It looks like they're very excited.
Well, perfect. Thank you so much for joining us, Jeremy.
Next, Nick Santiago gives us the 5-day forecast and a look at the rain across the state of Florida.
Plus, a look at how students are getting their hands dirty for a good cause. Lions and tigers and bears, oh my. In the past couple of weeks, the Arboretum staff have been seeing some pretty interesting sights, and these sights include some old and some new animals. Wildlife cameras are set up in multiple locations throughout the nature preserve on campus to document the different critters roaming around. Now, there aren't any lions or tigers out there, but believe me when I tell you, there's for sure a few bears wandering about. Students and Arboretum staff both have a personal investment in seeing these creatures on camera.
Because we're surrounded by urban landscape, so we can actually see how we're helping the animals as we're pushing them out of their native environment, giving them a new home, and making sure that they're safe here on our campus.
And like I said, it's not just the research students who are excited about seeing the different animals on these cameras, but also the foresters on campus. Nightly News has spoken with urban forester John Gazika multiple times, and Gazika says seeing bears and other animals on these cameras just shows how healthy the environment around campus actually is.
Speaking of being outdoors, the UCF Arboretum celebrated Arbor Day just a few days ago, although there is some confusion to when Arbor Day actually occurs. Students and Arboretum interns dug deep while planting trees and restoration areas along hiking trails, and there was plenty to be done, from hanging out with reptiles to touring the true Arboretum near Spectrum Stadium. One student says by hosting this event, the Arboretum is making the community more aware of the importance of trees.
Being a part of something that's like fun like this is like a cool way of getting people to be exposed to it and care about it, I guess.
About 60 trees were planted in different areas from the Arboretum. The urban foresters are already putting in orders for more species for plants for future projects. The Arboretum staff says the turnout for the event was fantastic and might even be considered their best Arbor Day celebration in the past 5 years. So, Haley, This weekend, finals is coming up soon. I'm planning to take some time to relax, de-stress right before we get in the thick of it. What are your weekend plans looking like?
You know what? I don't plan on looking at my phone. I don't plan on going on social media. I'm going to stay home and I'm just going to relax because, once next week hits, I'm going to be wore out from the floor out.
Oh, I 100% understand that.
But I think that we should probably take it over to Nick right now so he can tell us what our next 5 days are going to look like in Central Florida.
Thanks, Tanisha and Haley. Let's look at the highs across Florida. Highs aren't looking too bad across Florida. Doesn't look like it'll be too hot out there for you. In Tallahassee, we're looking at 74 degrees for your high, and also in Jacksonville, we're looking around 86 degrees. We're going to move a little south down to Tampa. It's around 82 degrees, and if we move to Central Florida here in Orlando, it's looking at 86 degrees as your high. If you go down south to Miami, we're looking at 83 degrees as your high. Now let's take a look at those lows. The lows in Tallahassee is 48 degrees, and the low in Jacksonville is 54 degrees, so you might want to keep a coat around. If we move a little south down to Tampa Bay, we're looking at 62 degrees as your low, and in Orlando, we're looking at 57 degrees. Move down south to Miami, of course, it's still kind of hot at 70 degrees for your low. Now, I talked about rain earlier, so let's look at that rain radar for you. We got rain coming in from the south. We got rain coming in from the southwest. It's looking really heavy out there, so you really will want to keep your umbrella, maybe even a poncho on you, just so you can stay dry. Now let's look at the 5-day forecast. For the next 5 days, we're looking at really sunny weather and 0% chance of rain, but you never know, we do live in Florida. So for your high for Saturday, we're looking at 72 degrees and your low at 57 degrees. Same thing for Sunday, we're looking at to stay in the 70s for your high at 76 degrees and stay in the 50s at 57 degrees again. On Monday, we're looking at a high of 81 degrees and a low of 61 degrees. We move into Tuesday and Wednesday, we're looking at the same weather. Tuesday is at 84 degrees for your high and low is 64 degrees. And on Wednesday, your high is 85 degrees with a low of 66 degrees. Not too bad for a 5-day forecast. Now back to the desk with Haley and Tanisha.
Thanks, Nick. This weather has been really great, and I'm super excited for the next few days.
Even though today isn't going to be that nice, knowing that the next 5 days, especially going into like finals and the end of the semester, I am very happy that we're going to start, seeing something nice. But find out more in just a few minutes.
Find out who's joining the men's basketball team.
What's going on, Knight fans? I'm Zack Winiecki. Let's see what's happening this week in UCF sports. As we speak, the UCF men's tennis team is playing against SMU in the American Athletic Conference Championship, or tournament. For the first time in school history, the Knights are the #1 seed in that tournament and had a first-round bye yesterday, so they started conference play today just 2 hours ago at the USTA National Campus. For the doubles points, UCF will rely on Trey Hildebrand and Bogdan Pavel to lead the way. They're currently the top-ranked freshman duo in the nation. For the singles point, Gabriel DeCamps is expected to lead the Knights. He's currently number 35 in the national singles rankings. If the Knights win this match, they're expected to play the 4th or 5th seed tomorrow at noon. The women's team is also participating in their championship today. The last team, in the quarterfinals, 4-0. Today, the team faces the Tulsa Golden Hurricane in the semifinals at the USTA National Campus at the top of the hour. To watch the tennis teams, go to ucfknights.tv. After losing what could be up to 8 players this offseason, the men's basketball team got some much-needed additions yesterday. They signed 3 players, Tony Johnson, Moses Bull, and Avery Diggs. Johnson is a point guard from Atlanta who averaged 20 points, 4 assists, and 5 rebounds last season. Meanwhile, Bull and Diggs will add size after the graduation of Taco Fall. And while those new Knights prepare for next season, several former Knights are preparing for the next level. The NFL draft is on Thursday, and several Knights figure to hear their names called. Last year, there were 4 UCF players drafted, and though there are 21 draft-eligible Knights this season, don't expect to see that many people taken this year. The most likely to get drafted is junior defensive tackle Tristan Hill. The early declarer was the only player from last year's team to get an invite to the NFL Combine, and he created quite a buzz for himself. He projects to get taken as high as the 3rd round. Receiver Dredrick Nelson, who did surprise some people when he declared, also has a shot at getting drafted. He became one of Mackenzie Milton's favorite targets in his time here at UCF and ran an impressive 4.42 at UCF Pro Day. He says he's heard from several teams, including the Cardinals and Steelers. He looks to be a day 3 guy or go undrafted. Defensive end Titus Davis, the only player still taking classes here, also could go on day 3. He was one of the Knights' most productive players during that 25-game win streak. Other guys include kicker Matthew Wright, partner Mac Loudermilk, and tackle Wyatt Miller. In June is the NBA draft, and 4 UCF basketball players also hope to go pro. Aubrey Dawkins, who only played 1 year here at UCF, looks to be the best pro prospect. He helped his draft stock a lot with that dominant 32-point game against Duke. Even Coach K called him the best player on the court. He could go as high as the first 10 picks in the 2nd round. Then there's the big guy in the middle, Taco Fall, who also saw his draft stock rise in March. Fall declared for the draft last year, but ended up coming back to school. There's no coming back this time. He's looking to be a day 2 or round 2 guy as well. And arguably the greatest player in school history, BJ Taylor, also has NBA aspirations. Despite having his name peppered throughout the UCF record book and finishing on the first-team All-AC this season, he's not receiving much draft buzz. And even if he doesn't hear his name called on draft night, he should get an invite to a summer league team. And finally, there's the beast, Chad Brown. Known for his effort and athleticism, Brown's numbers don't leap off the page, but his defense and hustle made him a fan favorite. He announced he'll be training for the draft as well. And if any of these guys do get drafted this week, it'll be the first time a UCF player got drafted since 2009. Now that's all I got for you in sports. Back to the desk with Haley and Tanisha.
Thanks, Zach. That's all the time for right now. Thanks for joining us. Remember, you can always keep up with us on Twitter at UCF Nightly News.
And if you've got a story idea you want us to know about, send it our way. You can reach us at nightlynews@gmail.com.
Be sure to tune in next week when the new Nightly News class takes over. I'm Tanisha Breidenbach.
And I'm Haley Rowland. Thanks for watching. Have a great summer.
Stop
smiling like
Roll the credits?
Tanisha and I were like,
what's happening? You scared us.
I wish you would have told us.
Yeah, we were like, you should have told us in our ear.
We didn't have time.
Because we looked, we were like, yikes.
We're missing Rondo right now, but I think